Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Monster Hunter Vendetta, the second book in the Monster Hunter International series by Larry Correia. This is a kind of sci-fi fantasy pulp story. It's about literally this group called Monster Hunter International, which what do? Hunt monsters. And as I said, it's very pulpy, it's very fun. And let me tell you, there is just these books have a refreshing nature to them where you just feel the fun of, oh, there's an army of zombies out there. I'm gonna go get like a big gun and go just like mow down an army of zombies. Or like I'm gonna go get a machete and hack up some vampires or something. Like it's just got some of that fun adventure. We're just gonna go kill a bunch of bad guys, fun action type stuff. And I think that's the strongest part of the books is the action, which I'm not a big action person in books. I much prefer the dialogue, the character journeys, the plot, the overall plot. I don't care about action generally, but I do really like them in these books. I did read the first book, Monster Hunter International, earlier this year. It was actually like at the beginning of the year, it was like January. And I really enjoyed it. It wasn't, the best book of the year, but it was a really entertaining book. I had a lot of fun with it. That's what I'll describe this book series. It's fun. You just sit down. It's, this book the first one was 700 pages, but, it's worth it. It's a fun adventure. This one's about 600 pages, so a little bit shorter, but it flies by generally quickly. The book is, I think, a little bit too long in the middle. I think that's the biggest problem with the book, is I feel like some of it could have been cut out a little bit in the middle. Where the story kind of meanders a little bit. But it's still very entertaining. I think the opening of this book is incredibly strong. And I think the ending of the book, the closing of the book, is incredibly strong. The climax was excellently done. It's just that the middle got a little bit long. But there's some really fun elements to this book. For instance, at one point in the book, the Monster Hunter crew realizes that the monsters are going to be at a rock concert, and the person who's leading the rock concert is, a sibling of one of the main characters, and so because of that, they end up going to the rock concert and end up having to fight off all these monsters and end up having to get the singer off to safety, and everybody blames the singer because the government has to cover up everything because the public doesn't know about monsters. It's just wild and it's weird and it's a fun part of the story. And at the beginning of the book, the main characters are down in Mexico, and they're supposed to be fighting off one type of monster, and then another type of monster comes in and just totally changes stuff, and there's extradition and all this fun stuff. The book does have a lot of gun talk in it, but it's not overwhelming. The characters will talk about why a gun's important for maybe a paragraph, and then it'll move on from that. It doesn't last too long, because I've seen some people say, oh, this is just all about guns. And yeah, it's a big part of the book, and Larry Correia used to work at a gun shop, and he actually, when he originally wrote the first book in the series, he was publishing it on gun forums. That's how people started getting into it, before Bain picked up the first book, and this second book was published by Bain as well. And it gets all gun stuff right, but it's not overbearing, I don't think. And Larry Correia is a very controversial figure. Just take my word for it. Do not look up anything about his politics or anything. Just trust me on that. But his worldview comes in some interesting ways in the book, especially when, though, you have the private business of Monster Hunter International against the government, and you have government overreach, and you have discussions of bureaucracy and the surveillance state, and about government agencies having power where Congress should have the power. There's a lot of really fascinating elements to it, and it never feels particularly preachy. It's obvious where Larry Correia's worldview comes from, that he's obviously a much more right-of-center person than most authors. That being said, there's a lot of books that I read where it comes from a lot of left-of-center authors, and it doesn't always feel preachy in those books either. It just feels like you can tell this is the author's worldview, but it's still an entertaining book. That's the way I describe this, is you could be someone more liberal and enjoy this book, just like I think a conservative can enjoy a lot of the liberal books that I read. So his worldview is it's there, but it's not like you can't possibly read the book and enjoy it if you have a different worldview of the main author. I don't think. Again, there are some really fun ways of making monsters and creatures interesting. I mentioned in my review of the first book how the way that Larry Correia deals with elves is hilarious and also just really creative. The way in this book he deals with trolls. I laughed out loud when the trolls showed up. I laughed out loud. It was hilarious what he does with trolls in this book. And gnomes. The gnomes show up in this book. It is funny. It is downright funny what he does with the gnomes in this book. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Again, if you're looking for traditional epic fantasy, otherworld stuff, now that's not what you're getting here. This is set in America, mostly. I mean, they go to Mexico at one point, but it's mostly set in America. It's, everything's taken, kind of silly like. You're just like, mowing down the enemies. And there are some weird, like, creatures that have an overarching story for the entire series. Like, there is a thread of, like, it's building to something, but this book is largely self-contained. It is its own story, just like the first book was also its own story. And so I would actually say that this is a really good comparison to the Dresden Files. And everybody makes this comparison, but the Dresden Files, for the most part, start out as just individual stories that are kind of self-contained, but there's kind of an overarching story happening as well. Whereas the Dresden Files is about a detective investigating monster-related things, creature-related things, and is very pulpy. This is about the guys that you call in. The investigators done their work. Now these are the guys called in to destroy the monsters, to like mow them down. And so it's fun. It is a fun series. It is not a favorite series of mine, but I enjoy the process of reading the series. Each book from here on out gets shorter. So I think books 3 and 4 in this series are like only 500 pages in mass market, and then I think books 5 and 6 get to be like 400 something, and then they get down to like I think all like 380 by the last book. And there's like 8 out currently. Larry Correia has stated that he eventually wants to go back and write a few more, but for right now there's 8 out currently, and so I've read the first 2. I own the first 4 in the series. I do have books 3 and 4 on TBRs for later on this year. I hope I'll get to them. We'll see how it happens. But it is a fun series I'm really enjoying. So that is my review of Monster Hunter Vendetta. I'll give this book like a 7.5 out of 10. It's an enjoyable book. It is not. I think the first book was a little bit better because I think it was a little bit more creative overall, but both books are still like really close. Like I think of the first one like an 8 out of 10, the second one's a 7.5. Like it's really enjoyable, and I'm having a blast reading through these. These are good palate cleanser books. These are good, like if you just read like a Malazan book or like a Game of Thrones and you're just like, man, these books are so heavy and just so thematic and all this stuff. If you just want a fun pulpy, yeah, let's go shoot up some monsters, this is the book series that I think will work for you. So that is my review. Let me know your thoughts on the series down below in the comments section. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.